Hi, my name is Medhat Elmasry, and in this video, I'm going to introduce you to node.js. Node is a very useful platform to learn about. In recent years, it has become very popular. Now, if you want to download Node, you need to go to node.js.org. Let's open up a browser and go there, node.js.org. There are two versions that you can download. One is the LTS version, which means long-term support, and the other one is the current version. I prefer downloading the LTS version. I've already done that on my machine. So if we open a command prompt here and look at the version of Node that I have, you can type node -v for version. The version I have is 8.9.4. Now, another important product that gets downloaded with Node is NPM. NPM stands for the Node Package Manager. If you want to know the version of NPM that you have, you can type in npm -v again. It takes a bit longer, but then it came back and it's saying that it's 5.6.0. Once you've downloaded and installed Node, there are a few things you can do with the Node command prompt. So let me just get into the Node command prompt, enter here, and it will get into a prompt where you can write something. For example, here I can say var x equals to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I hit enter here, it says undefined because it didn't really use that variable x. But I can come next and just type in x, and it will remember that it's been assigned a value of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can even enter some strings like hello, maybe an operator plus, and say Tom, and it will come back and say hello Tom. I can even enter JSON object. For example, here I can say name is, let's say, Jane, and gender is, let's say, female, and this gets stored as a JSON object. I can even save the JSON object to a variable. So I'm going to recall this, come back to the very beginning and say var, let's say p for person equals to Jane with gender female. Now I can reference the individual components of that JSON object by just typing in p.name, for example. If I type in p.name, it returns for me Jane. If I type in gender, it will return for me female, as expected. To exit from the command line prompt of Node, I will just hit Control-C twice. So Control-C first time, Control-C second time takes me back to the command prompt. Now let us actually write a program, a simple program. Now the preferred IDE that I like to use is called Visual Studio Code. It's very Node friendly, and that's what I recommend. So let's get started. I'm going to open up my File Explorer, go into a directory here, for example this one here, and I'll create a folder called, say, Sunshine, and be whatever you want it to be. Now, having created Sunshine, let me drop into a command prompt at this level. So I will type in cmd here so that I can drop into a command prompt at that location. And an easy way to open Visual Studio Code at a particular folder location is to type in code followed by a dot. It will open it up in that location. At this point, let me create a very simple Hello World Node app. I'm going to click on plus here for a file, and if I want to create a folder, I can hit the plus for the folder. So let me click on this and call my file hello.js. All node files have to be with extension .js because they're simply JavaScript. Now, as I type my command, I'm going to type in console. You can see that is IntelliSense. Console.log, and I'm going to type in here hello world, and I'll end it with a semicolon. Now, a good tip to know is that if you want to open a prompt window inside of Visual Studio Code, you can hit on your keyboard Control tilde. When I do that, it opens for me a PowerShell window inside of my Visual Studio Code, as you can see right here. Now, in here, if I want to execute the application, of course, remember always to save. But what I did was I checked this autosave option under File in Visual Studio Code. That way I don't really need to remember to save because it does it automatically. Now, to run this app, I would type node followed by the name of the file. In my case, it is hello. If I hit enter here, you can see that it comes back with the result hello world. Let me add some more code to my node application. Let's, for example, create a person object, JSON object. Say person is, the name is, let's say Jane, and the gender is female. Now I can print parts of that object by going console.log and maybe t.name, and you can see IntelliSense is right in there giving you suggestions. Plus maybe a space plus g.gender, and I can save now and run the test app again to see what it's got. Apparently it's got an error, so there must be something wrong. G is not defined. Yes, I made an error. It should be P. It gives you a good sense of what you might have done wrong. Let's run it again, and this time it works. Another important concept that you need to know about when you build Node apps is the concept of modules. And the idea of a module is really divide and rule. Don't put all of your code into one file. Create multiple files that contain logically different code. In our case, as our first example, I'm going to create a file called messages. In that file, I'll add the following code: module dot exports dot say string first, and I'll just say here this is my first message. Okay, so module declares that this is a module, and exports means that this file can be used by others. It can be imported by other files. Let's create another variable here, but in the next variable is going to be a function. I can say module dot exports dot say message, as opposed to the previous variable, which was a string. This variable is going to be a function, and it will return a string. next one returns a string. This is a message from a function. Now, having saved this, suppose I want to use it in my hello.js file. In order to use it in my hello.js file, I will have to import it. And the way you import a module file is by declaring a variable, which I can call messages or whatever I want to call it, and then you say require, and in a string declare the location of messages. So IntelliSense really finds this file called messages. You don't need to mention that it has extension.js. The extension is already known. So now I can say here console.log, and I can go with the variable that was declared, which is messages dot first, and that should return the string, this is my first message. Let's do it for the function. Let's go console.log, and then I can type in here messages dot message, and because this is a function, I have to have an open and close bracket. So let's see what's going to happen. At the bottom here, let me run the app by calling node hello.js, and you can see here these are the values that were being returned previously, but what's new is that this string is being returned from the module, and this string is being returned from the function in that module. Now, a function that's being exported doesn't necessarily need to have a name. It can be made an anonymous function. To give you an example, let's create another module, and this one I'm going to call it person. And in person, I'm going to also do a module export. And here, I'm going to give it an anonymous function. In that function, let's say I'm going to declare a first name and a last name. So I can say this dot first name equals to, let's say, Fred. And this dot last name equals to Smith. And let's add something else. This dot gender equals to male. Now, this is a module in its own right, but it's got a function that doesn't really have a name. Now, because it doesn't have a name, when I use that function, I must instantiate it. So let's go back to our hello, which is our main app, and see how we can use this. To keep it simple, I'm going to comment out all what we've done so far. And let's start a blank sheet here. So I'm going to say var e for person equals to require, and the name of the file. And you can see person has been detected here. Now, if I want, actually, let me change this to person. If I want to use this module, I have to instantiate person. And the way that is done is var e equals to new person. Now, I have an instance of this person module, and I can use it. So I can go console.log, and go p dot, and you can see IntelliSense has detected that there are these properties here. I can go p dot first name plus maybe a space plus e dot last name plus space as well, and p dot gender. Now if I run this, you will see that it finds these properties: Fred Smith male. Now it's not a good idea to always put your Node JavaScript files in the root folder. You should really break them up into folders where in each folder you put the code that is logically related. As an example, let me create a folder here and I'll call it a logger. And in that folder, I'll create a new file and I'll call it index.javascript. Now, the name index.javascript is actually important because it is the default name of a file that you can put into a folder. And that really means that if you call it anything else, you have to refer specifically to that name. But if it is index.js, all you do is reference the folder, and Node will assume that if it finds an index.js file in there, that is the default page. So it's always a good idea, just call the names of your files in folders index.js if you want to have a default name. And in that case, I'm going to do that as well. So in here, let us create a module file, and we want it to be exported. And let me call it log. And this will be a function. And it will take, say, a message. Now, what do we want to do with this message? I'm assuming here we want to take that message and tag it to a date, because that's what we do when we log error messages or log events in applications. So I'm going to instantiate a date object. And I'll just print out console. I'll just print out the date plus maybe a colon and a space, and then the message. So now, if I want to use this, let's use it again in this hello.js. Let me comment out everything that I've done so far and use this hello.js. No, not the hello.js. Let's use logger. So in order to use logger, I can import it by going logger equals to require, and I would just reference the logger folder. The next step is actually to use the log function that's in there. So I can go logger.log and pass the message. So now if I run the app, you'll see here that it displayed the message that I passed it, and also attached a date to that message. Now this date is too long, and perhaps I'm not comfortable with its format. So let's find a way to format the date. This leads us to the concept of packages. Now, with Node, the most popular package manager is npm. Now, if you search for npm, the main site for npm is npmjs.com. And there are tens of thousands of packages that can be downloaded. Now, I have in mind a package called Moment. And Moment is one among many packages that's useful for formatting dates. So in order to have, in order to use Moment, we need to download that package. Let's go through the steps of maintaining packages in our app. The first thing you need to do is actually to type in npm init in the location where you have your app. What this does is it initializes a package.json file. And the package.json file, in addition to specifying certain parameters about your application, like the author and the version and all that stuff, it also keeps track of dependencies. And what dependencies are the packages that are needed by your application. So if I type in npm init, it asks me, the first question is, what is the package name? And it defaults to Sunshine. What is Sunshine? Sunshine in this case is the name of my folder. If I'm happy with that, I just hit enter. Next question is, what is the version? Next question is a description. Maybe I'd like to enter a description here. This is an intro application into Node. Hit enter. Entry point. It tries to determine what is the main app that your application needs to call. It has guessed correctly, because my main app now is hello. But let's assume that I want it to be something else. So if I say entry point app.js, that's going to be my main entry point. Test command, this is if we're doing test cases, which we're not in this example, so I can hit enter. Git repository, if you do have a Git repository, you can specify it here. If you have any keywords, you can specify them here. Your keywords could be things like payroll, like conversion, or whatever it is your app does. I'm going to hit enter. The author, I'm going to enter my name here. If you have any licensing that you're using, say Apache or MIT licensing or something like that, you may want to enter it here. In this case, there is no licensing. So I accepted the default, so it comes back and says, is this okay? And you can enter yes to say, yes, it's okay. What happens here? If I minimize this command prompt and I look at package.json, it basically wrote for me a package.json file with all the parameters that I entered. Now, I did mention that my main app is app.js, but I don't have an app.js, so I better create one. So I'm going to say add new file, and I'll create an app.js file. Since my app.js file is empty, I'm going to copy over some of the things that I need from this previous file, because I'm using Logger. So I'm going to copy this into app.js. And the other file that I'm interested in is the fact that I'm calling the log function here. So I'm going to copy this and come into app.js and paste it. Now, the whole reason that I'm doing this is because I wanted to show you about packages and installing the Moment package. So in order to install the Moment package, what I'll do is I'm going to type npm install --save moment. what minus minus save does is that it is going to bring the moment package and install it locally inside of my application. Let's have a look. So I'm going to hit enter here, and it's going to go off and find moment and bring it down. And when it does find it, it's going to put it into a folder called node_modules. That's the directory where all the packages go. Let's have a look. If I go into the file system, I'll find, sure enough, a folder called node modules, and in there is a folder called moment. If I open up moment, you'll see that it's got many files. These are some of the files that it needs, as well as others and so on. Now, when you're putting your code in a repository like Git, or even if you're copying your application from one computer to another, you don't need to copy node modules. Delete the node modules. As an example, I'm going to delete it here. You can see it takes some time because there's a lot of files. Sometimes it could be, well, it could be like hundreds and thousands of these files. Let's have a look at what package.json has. In package.json, it created a section in that file called dependencies. And in that section, it wrote that this application is dependent on moment, and the specific version is 2.20.1. You will notice that I actually deleted node modules. So how do I restore it? It's very simple. If you come in here and go npm install, npm looks at that package.json file, and it checks to see that all the dependencies are there. And if any of them are not there, it goes off and gets them. That's why your node modules, if you find it to be too big and you want to keep a backup of your file or something, you can quite safely just delete the node modules file folder, I mean. Okay, so we're done here, and you can see that that file would be restored by now. Here it is. Here's the folder of node modules, and all the files have come back. Now, how do I use the moment module? The moment module needs to come into this logger, so I need to import it here because I want to create a better format for my date. So I'm going to type in var moment equals to require moment. Now notice that I don't need to specify which directory moment is in because it's a dependency. All I do is say moment because I don't need to worry what file name it is and so on. So I'm importing moment, the actual package here, and now I'm going to format date. So I'm going to say var now equals to moment, and I'll instantiate a new date. And I can actually comment this out. And for the date, I'm going to use this variable now. And it's got a function called format, where I actually specify formatting directive. In this case, I'm going to say I want it formatted by the day of the month, followed by the century date. And that's it. So now let's see what's happened. So I'll go node app.js, and here we have a nicer looking date, and that's been formatted by moment. Now there are many modules that do different things. And whenever there is a situation where you want to do something and you know that somebody else must have created a module or some sort of function to do that, don't try to build it from scratch yourself, but go and do a search at npm and you will sure enough find a module that does that job for you. Now let's change focus a little bit and consider how Node can be useful in the web world. Up to now, we were just looking at command line applications. But how about if you want to do some application that pertains to the web? You can actually, to start with, use Node as a web server. So I'm going to show you how you can easily create a web server using Node that listens on a particular port number. In our case, we're going to make it listen on port 3000. So let me create a new file now, and let me call it server, because it's really going to be a server. And in my server app, I'm going to use a package that is built into Node called HTTP. So just like we imported modules before, I'm going to import this HTTP package that is built into Node. And I'm going to have it create a server for me. So I can say var server equals to http dot create server. And we pass it an anonymous function. And this anonymous function, it takes a request and a response. And let's say when the server starts, we want it, or when the page is requested, we want it just to spit out the log and spit out, when the page is requested, we want to spit out the relative address. When the page started, we want to display in a command line the relative address. So we're going to get out of the request the URL and display it in a command prompt. Now at this point, the server really hasn't started. In order to start the server, we have to make it listen on a port number. And we'll choose port 3000. So let's go through this again. We want to use a module called HTTP that's built in. Next step is to create a server and have it log the location, the relative URL of the request, and then have it listen on port 3000. Start the server and have it listen on port 3000. Now to start this, you'd have to go node server.js. We don't get any response because we didn't tell it to do anything. It's going to respond if there is a request. So let's come here and open up a browser. So I'm going to come here and open up a browser and go localhost host 3000. And when I type 3000 and I hit enter, it gives me relative of address of the root. Now let me enter something else. See, I entered AAABBBCCC1. So if I hit enter here, this is exactly what will appear in the command line. And that is because in our app, we told it to spit out the relative URL, the relative address. Let's add some HTML to our web page. So I'm going to add some code right here. And in this code, I'm specifying that the status code in my output stream is going to be 200, which really means that everything's good, that there's no errors. I'm going to set the content type to be HTML. And here I'm sending some HTML to the output stream, to the browser. Let me run this, see what we're going to be getting. Run this, go into the browser. Here. And actually, let's put it here and say localhost 3000. When I hit enter, I get some HTML. And down here, of course, you get some output. Now, this favicon, because the web server always searches for a favicon. We don't have one, but still that's the way web servers are set up. They always search for a favicon. So let me just make a small change. Suppose I comment out content type. This way it doesn't know what the content type is. Let me stop the server here. So let me start it again and request the page by refreshing this. You see that the HTML is not being interpreted by the browser because it doesn't know that the format of the page is actually HTML. Bring this down, bring the server down, and set this back to HTML. It's not really realistic to hard code HTML inside of our application. Wouldn't it be better that we actually serve HTML pages? So let's actually come here and create an index.html file that is a static HTML file. And in here, of course, you can put some real HTML. Let me put some real HTML here. I'm going to this. Here we've got some real HTML. And I'm going to say this is coming from index.html. Suppose we want to serve this page. We'll need to have some sort of a file reading module. Now back in our server.js, I'm going to import a module that helps me deal with the file system. Here it is. It's require fs, which is a built-in module in Node that allows me to interact with the file system. Now, let me also specify the host name, say that it is 127.0.0.1, and the port number, I'll make it a variable. I'll replace my server logic with this code here. I'm going to get rid of that and replace it with this code. Now, what does this say? Using the file system module, I'm going to read the file index.html. Potentially, there could be an error. Maybe that file doesn't exist. But if it does exist, the text will be read into this variable called HTML. Now, if an error exists, it's just going to pass the buck and just throw the error. Otherwise, we're going to create a server. And the server also takes a request and response object. Just like we did before, we're going to set the status code to 200. We're going to set the content type to HTML. And we're going to write the text that's in the index.html file to the output stream. And after we do that, we're going to end. Now, this part here is where we listen on port number 3000 on the local host. And when the server starts, we're going to display in the command prompt that the server has started on port 3000. So now let's run this and see what's going to happen. Stop the server, run it again. Now, unlike before, we actually receive a message here in the command prompt saying that the server has started on port 3000. Let me go and refresh the browser. We get the actual content of the index.html file. I noticed that I have a mistake here. Instead of dot, I put a comma. Well, that's easily fixed. Come in here, click a dot, stop the server, start it again, and refresh, and now it's good. Thank you for watching my video, and I hope that you watch my other videos on this topic of Node. Thank you, and have a good time.